Welcome to your next chills before sleep. My name is Jack, and I'm 34 years old. Back in 2010, I met this beautiful woman, Marissa, who is now my wife. We hit it off, and by late 2011, we were living together in a small apartment in town. She was aware of this condition in which I dealt with, and she experienced sleep paralysis later on as well, so she understood my condition and how scared I used to get after my sleep paralysis. So we were living together for a couple of months now, and I experienced sleep paralysis for a long extent of time. I'd say maybe a month or so. I wake up one morning, unable to move. This is nothing I'm not used to dealing with. So I lay in bed next to my wife, who woke up at the same time as me, and she held my hand and smiled at me. I assumed she had no clue that I was paralyzed at the moment, but I thought to myself, I'll snap out of this soon enough. That's when I realized something was wrong. Way wrong. Something way darker was going on here than I originally thought, because beyond my wife, I could see a dark, shadowy figure standing at the corner of the room. I couldn't even move or speak to tell my wife to protect me from that dark figure. But my wife figured out I was seeing something in the distance, as my eyes showed fear. That dark figure in the corner started expanding, more and more, to the point it was all over the room. Now at that moment, I was freaking the hell out. I've dealt with similar things before, but what the heck was this? With the help of my wife, I fought really hard to come out of it, and I successfully did. This one, though, really got to me. It messed with my head, to be honest, and to this day, it still gives me chills. So which one was really my wife? That's when the one lying next to me began to dig into my hands with hers, and her nails turned into claws. The smile on her face grew bigger and bigger, to the point it consumed almost all of her face. Her eyes became hollow and black. A smile took over her entire face, and I began to feel fingers coming out of my bed, tickling my legs, and then trying to hold them down and pull me down into the bed. I fought really hard, and I came out of it like always. I have a baby monitor video on my nightstand by my bed. It shows my 2-year-old daughter asleep in her crib in the other room. Last night, I fell asleep laying on my side. After about 2 hours, my eyes open, and I can clearly see the baby monitor on my nightstand, but I can't move or speak. I'm fully paralyzed. After a few minutes of staring at the video monitor with a nervous, disturbing feeling, I see something walk up to the side of my daughter's crib. It was at least 7 feet tall and looked like a silhouette of a praying mantis human morph. I couldn't see the details, just its shape and size. It bends over the side of the crib, and its face gets very close to my daughter's face. I try my hardest to move my body or yell in order to snap out of it, but I can't. It stood there, bent over the side of the crib, its face less than a foot away from my daughter's. It stared at her for at least 60 seconds. Then suddenly, its head turned and looked at me at the camera. I can feel it watching me. It knows I'm paralyzed. At this point, I'm panicking inside, trying my hardest to kick and scream, but I just can't. A few seconds later, my wife lying in bed next to me shakes me and wakes me up. She woke up because our daughter just started screaming and crying on the baby monitor, which is very strange because our daughter never wakes up in the middle of the night and cries. We hop out of bed and run into her room. She's terrified. We stay in there with her until she's comfortable enough to fall asleep, and then we head back to bed and fall back asleep. An hour later, the same exact thing happens. Again, I go into paralysis and see the same figure on the monitor with our daughter. And then my wife wakes me up because our daughter is screaming again. I go into my daughter's room and pick her up. I had to ensure this stops, so I tuck her in my bed to make sure she sleeps safe. She didn't scream after that. The next day, right after lunch, I'm putting our daughter down for her daily regular nap, but this time, she doesn't want to take the nap and starts crying. She says, scary monster, over and over. That's the first time she's ever said that. In fact, it's the first time she's even said the word monster. I've been having sleep paralysis all of my life, and each time there's always some sort of dark figure watching, stalking me, wishing to do me harm. What if they've been real this whole time, and the only ones who can see them are me, and now apparently our daughter? What if these demons I'm creating in my mind while I'm in sleep paralysis are beginning to manifest in real life? A piercing shriek rang through the air. It woke Marissa up. She woke up with a deprived mind. She slowly opened her eyes, groggily, and encountered darkness. The shriek continued, and Marissa internally cringed. Attempting to investigate, she slowly stood up, but found herself unable to, as her arms had no strength along with the rest of her body. She suddenly heard the beating of her heart echoing loudly. She panicked and yet again attempted to move, but similar to before, she still had no bodily control. Furthermore, she realized her powerlessness and believed it was due to stress. 10 minutes went by. Marissa still stared at the utter darkness. Strange shapes appeared in front of her, a trick played by the mind. She began to panic again. What the hell, she thought. Once again, she put in all of her effort to move, which yielded no result. Marissa stood in the field of nothingness, unable to perceive and unable to observe. She was powerless. The void had devoured everything, leaving only her behind, leaving her to suffer, to repent. Suddenly, an agent of light managed to successfully pierce through the veil of darkness. It shone like the sun in the void, bringing forth joy within Marissa. She exclaimed in praise in her mind. She rejoiced, for she had not been forgotten. However, uneasiness crept into her time of joy. She still could not move. She still had no control. Fear began to build up. Her heart began to beat more rapidly. The light was now close enough to be clearly observed. But no matter how much effort she invested into seeing it, her mind could not grasp it. Her mind couldn't grasp its shape, its size, and its general properties. "Be not afraid," said the light. "I have come to offer freedom. I have come to offer your reward. Do you accept?" With no hesitation, without any will, Marissa's mouth moved. She uttered the words of confirmation. The being of light had been granted permission, and Marissa lost all control of herself. She didn't notice the terms of condition laid out in front of her to escape her mini hell, and failed to understand what permission she now granted this being. This was the first time my wife ever experienced something like this. I started going to a therapist later on, but that didn't end well. Because one day during my therapy session, I was asleep in bed on my back. It was a light sleep. The smell of the human breath, the warmth, not necessarily foul, but definitely present, right beside me, to my left. The breath eased against my face and neck. Again, not a foul breath, but an undeniable presence of life. I opened my eyes, but I was frozen. It was sleep paralysis. I actually experienced it regularly in the past, as I told you. Anyway, from the periphery of my vision, I could see something. The curtains to my right were open, and moonlight shone through, exposing the outline of a bald head to my left. It was right beside me. Now I couldn't move my head. Obviously, I could only look straight towards the roof, but I could see him from the corner of my eye. Usually when I have this paralysis, I snap out of it relatively quickly, about 40 seconds. Well, this time was no different. My senses finally came to me. I began to rotate my head towards the bald man, but as I did, he got lower and lower. I turned my head slowly, and every degree I turned, the man got lower. Lower and lower until he was underneath my bed. So there I sat, upright on my bed, staring out where the man had sat. The room was dimly lit, so it was safe to say my anxiety levels were pretty high. I thought I knew it was just paralysis until I heard the breathing again from under my bed. Furthermore, I am frozen on my bed. Frozen in fear, I grabbed my disposable camera, which sat on my windowsill, and the therapist snapped his notebook shut and capped his pen. Jack, quite frankly, I'm not a paranormal investigator, nor do I believe in such kind of sleep paralysis, the therapist says. I get up into a sitting position. I quickly try to take a picture, but the therapist puts his hand down in anger. You said you would hear me out. You gave me your word, I said. The therapist hit a buzzer, which sat on his desk, and a tall security guard entered the room. Please escort my client out of the room. He has shown a tremendous tendency for violence, and I will be discharging him. I kicked and screamed and wriggled until the door shut, and the therapist was left in silence. He slicked his hair back and rose to his feet. As he made his way towards his desk, he noticed something laying beside the door on the ground. A disposable photo. He walked over, bent down, and snapped it up, turning it around in his hand, and he saw it. Oh dear God. I lost all connections with the guy after that. Eventually there would be shadows. First one, then more. So came the voices, and eventually I started feeling hands on me, touching me, and strangling me. That was the worst, when the hands would slowly creep up my back to my neck and start to squeeze until I couldn't breathe anymore. I would wake up out of breath, sweaty and frightened. It was during one of these strangling events things changed. I always fought back, or tried to, as that was the natural thing to do. But then one day it just occurred to me, I should stop fighting. Just see what happened. Maybe for some reason I envisioned a brick wall, and I focused on that one brick in the middle. My body started to relax, and after a short while, the squeezing of my neck started to ease up, until it eventually stopped, completely. I woke up breathing normally, feeling relaxed. I can't remember any more details, but from then on, I never fought back, and it was not long after it all stopped completely. Likewise, I have not had any sleep paralysis ever since. Maybe I just outgrew it. After that, I told my wife to do the same, and my family never experienced anything like that again. My daughter slept peacefully. I don't know, but if you've experienced something similar, it might be worth trying for you too. Thank you for watching this video. Have you experienced a similar situation or another scary experience? Don't hesitate to submit your story by email or in the comments section down below. Ready for your next Chills Before Sleep? Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for us to provide you with more scary stories. Let us know what you think, and don't forget to enable all notifications. Be the first one to get the chills.